Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Treasure Talks. I am so glad you're here with us again. Time is flying and I am absolutely honored to have in my presence today just a dear friend and a person I adore, Kimberly Haar. And was it about 2 years ago that you were here last time? It's been a while.
It was about 2.5 years ago.
A lot has happened. And let me introduce you a little bit to Kim. I'm going to read a few things because you have got a bio that's quite impressive. I want to be like you when I grow up.
I want to be like you when I grow up.
I love Kimberly. When I met you, Kimberly, it was through Tulsa Women's Fellowship, and you shared your story, and my whole reaction the whole time was like, I was in complete awe. My jaw was just to the floor. You are the owner of There's Hope Counseling. It's a private practice in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You are a licensed therapist, couples, families, women, adolescents. She is also a guest co-host on the network radio of the podcast Keeping It Real, and has recently embarked on a new chapter of her life, which includes writing, teaching, speaking to women about how not to only survive circumstances that life has brought your way, but how to thrive in spite of them. And she openly shares her own story of moving from a place of tragedy and loss to a place of healing, hope, and triumph. Her testimony is a living example that demonstrates what the enemy meant for evil, God will redeem and use for good. And I'm excited to be here to talk about your new book because your story and your testimony, it's life-changing. I mean, it was truly one of those stories that impacted my life in a forever way, especially if you've walked through really traumatic situations. And you were married for 23 years. And I think the best place to start is, let's start here. You were married for 23 years, but something went awry. Can you kind of start there?
Sure. I had been married for 23 years, and my husband and I had 4 children. And throughout the 23 years, there had been patterns of betrayal that I had forgiven, put up with, and those patterns didn't change. And so when we were married 23 years, I made the decision, which was probably the hardest decision I've made, and that was to divorce my husband. And when we divorced, I told him that I was going to remain single for 4 years because our youngest children were 16, and I was going to raise them and let them leave the home so that they never had to worry about mom, getting involved in another relationship, fight for my attention. And so 4 years came and went. And I woke up in January 2017, and I just felt this knowing on the inside of me, this was the year I was going to be married again. And I heard these inner words that said, buckle your seatbelt.
Wow.
And I had told my husband originally that if during the 4 years we were divorced, if he got his life, on track, right with the Lord, we could maybe revisit the idea of reconciliation, because I did love him. And I had stood for so long for healing for our marriage that it was really difficult decision to make, to walk away. 4 years came and went, and there hadn't been the changes that I needed. And so I began dating, and April 1, I went on a date with a man and knew immediately this is the man I wanted to marry. And we had dated for 4 weeks. I thought my ex-husband and I had a friendly divorce because we would often get together. We would often talk about our kids. And he had invited me to talk to him about our kids. And we got into a disagreement, and I left. And he made the comment, he said, maybe I'm just going to need to go talk to this man. His name's Andrew. And I thought, oh no, he's going to go make a fool of himself. And so I left my ex-husband's home and I went to Andrew's. And I said, Andrew, I just got to warn you, my ex-husband may come and kind of make a fool of himself. But I asked him, I said, would you fight for me?
Wow.
And I had no idea what those words were going to come to mean. And he said, well, of course I would fight you. And this is like 9 o'clock at night when I went there. So I went home. I went to bed, and something inside me, I was alone at my house, something inside me just prompted me, lock your bedroom door. So I got up, I locked my bedroom door, went back to sleep, or I went to sleep, and at 2:30 in the morning, I woke up and my bedroom door was coming down, crashing off the hinges. And my ex-husband had broken into my home. He was intoxicated, he had a gun. And for the next 4 hours, I was assaulted. He then kidnapped me, and he told me that as punishment for ruining his life, he was going to make me watch him murder Andrew, who's the man that I had been dating. And let me back up for a minute and say, Andrew and I both knew right away that we wanted to marry each other. So even though
so you'd already talked about it.
Yeah, even though it had only been 4 weeks, I like to kind of laugh and say Andrew is an engineer, and he told me, he said that he had actually asked Google how long you needed to know someone before you know you're in love. I love it. And so we knew we wanted to marry. But so anyways, my ex-husband drove me to Andrew's house. I didn't realize that he had been stalking me. And so he knew the way to Andrew's house. And he told me, he said, you better be glad you weren't there last night when I drove by his house at 11 o'clock, because I had already decided if you were there, I was going to kill you both. Wow. And so my ex-husband kidnapped me. He took me to Andrew's house, and he got out of the vehicle and grabbed the gun, the bullets, and I saw him mount the front steps of the house, and I heard three bullets go off. So I most likely knew Andrew was not going to make it through this. I assumed he was dead. And when my ex-husband left the vehicle, he had left the keys in the ignition. And he looked at me and he said, now you can go do whatever you need to do. And so I got in the vehicle, I escaped, I went to a local grocery store. I walked in, and of course, I was almost unrecognizable at this point. And I just screamed, call 911. And long story short, I was taken to the storehouse, policemen came, ambulance came, and a police officer was escorting me. He said, ma'am, there's an ambulance waiting for you. And so he was walking me out, and I said, I need to go to that vehicle and I need to get my cell phone because I don't know any of my phone numbers by heart.
Right.
And I said, I need to call my family so they don't see this on the news. I need to tell them that I'm okay. And so when I opened the door to the vehicle, my ex-husband was sitting behind the steering wheel.
Oh my gosh.
And he had walked several blocks and I guess had recognized the vehicle was there. And he was pointing a gun at me. And so I dropped to the ground. The police came and made a human shield around me. And it was probably about 35 minutes. And my ex-husband was apprehended. And I was taken to the hospital.
Can you guys believe that? I mean, that's just unbelievable. Is he in prison?
He is. He is serving a sentence.
Wow. Okay. How do you get through something like that? How do you even start? What was the process that you took to walk through this? Because you're a therapist.
I'm a therapist.
Did you counsel yourself, or did you seriously you'd have to get massive therapy through this?
The very first thing I did is I called a therapist, and I put myself in therapy because I knew the value of going to therapy when you need it. But one of the things is I didn't know what had happened to Andrew. And I didn't hear from him. Now, I think it was probably a few nights after it happened, his adult son called my phone, and my daughter had it. And he said, this is kind of the update, but we think that your mom and my dad just need to go their separate ways. Because I'd met one of Andrew's children. And when he said that, he said that I kind of had a lady that worked with Andrew, so I would ask for updates, and she was kind of like my mole. And I asked her, I said, okay, what's his thinking? And she said, you know what, Andrew at first wanted to see you, but then he decided it's just best you guys go your separate ways. And so I went and I lived at my uncle and aunt's house. They had a beautiful home in the city I was in, and they were going to Canada for the summer. And so when I went out into their backyard, there was a beautiful big pergola that the first moment I saw it, I knew that's where I was going to meet Jesus. I knew that's where my healing was going to begin. And so for every morning, especially in the beginning, I would go out to that pergola and I would wrap myself in a robe or a blanket, and I would just lay prostrate on the cement, and I would just weep and weep and weep. And I began going through some old journals I had. And I saw where years earlier I had written things like, Lord, help me to trust you. Give me the faith of a child. And on one particular day, I had written that I really felt impressed that the Lord was telling me back the words, "I'm the Lord of the dance." And so one morning I was out there at the pergola and I heard a song come on the radio, and it was called "Dance with Me, O Lover of My Soul." And I was in tears and I cried and I said, "Lord, as an act of my faith, I'm scared to trust you. I don't know if I even want to trust you because I don't know if you'll give me what I want." But I said, as an act of my faith, I am going to choose to trust you. And I would put myself in a waltz position and I would close my eyes and I would look up at the sky and I would waltz around that cement pergola to the song, "Dance with Me, O Lover of My Soul." And little by little, I laugh and I say I was a little bit like the engine that could. In the beginning, I was saying, "I want to trust you. Lord, help me trust you," but I don't trust you. And then I would tell the Lord what he should do, how he should do it. I'd tell my friends, "This is how you need to pray." And finally, I said, "Lord, I just surrender. I just surrender. I'm going to trust you." And so there was lots of things to work through, but after about 3.5, 4 weeks, I got a Facebook Messenger post from Andrew.
Yay!
And right, he didn't have my phone number anymore.
Oh, yay,
so he
Andrew.
contacted me on Facebook Messenger and it said, "Hey, I'm alive." And
Wow.
I said, "Can I come see you?" And so we made arrangements where I would go up to the hospital because it started with like 6, 7 surgeries, but I lost count. I think it was somewhere
Unbelievable.
around 12 or 13 surgeries. And I went up to the hospital. We made sure I went when his kids weren't there.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was sneaking around. And I walked in and I looked at him and I said, "Andrew, where does this leave us?" And my heart sank when he said, "I don't know." He said, "I know what happened to you. You know what's happened to me." And he said, "We're both really going to be messed up." And something just came over me and I went close to him and I shook my finger in his face. And I said, "Andrew Haar, you will never meet another woman like me."
That's right.
And 4 weeks later, we were engaged. And 4 months later, we got married.
And I just think about how you're waltzing with Jesus and he's already working behind the scenes, knowing how the
absolutely.
whole story is going to end. And, as you're sharing this, I'm just thinking, how do you stay out of the role of a victim mentality when you go through trauma like that? And how do you learn to forgive?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
In the beginning, I would have to go down to the district attorney's office because it was a crime, and there was a piece of paper there that said "victim sign here," and there was an arrow where I was supposed to sign. And something inside me, when I would sign my name there, it was almost like a frustration and anger. I thought, I am not going to be a victim. I was victimized. But I am not going to allow myself to stay in that victim. And I think of the story about Ruth in the Bible, where Ruth and her husband leave their land to go to a new land. And they've got 2 sons. And through the years, her husband dies. Her 2 adult sons die. And one of her daughter-in-laws goes back with her to the homeland that Naomi had. And when Naomi's going back, she's greeted by the women, and they're all saying, "Naomi's here," and is all excited. And Naomi says, "Don't call me Naomi anymore. From now on, I'm going to be known as Mara." And Mara means bitter. And in that moment, she made a choice from here going forward. I'm going to hold on to that hurt. I'm going to be bitter. This is going to be my legacy. And when I went through this, I've walked with so many different of my own clients that walk through things that are traumatic and deal with, unforgiveness or forgiveness is a process. But I knew in my heart from the very beginning, I was going to forgive. I knew from the very beginning, I was going to let this moment not define me, but I was going to let it refine me. I was going to let God use the brokenness. And it's interesting, the detective on my case asked me, because I stayed friends, well, she wasn't my friend, but we became friends. And she asked me, she said, "Kim, do you remember what you told me in the emergency room when you were all banged up?" And she was training a new detective. And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "You looked at me and you said, I'm not going to let this experience go to waste. I'm going to be a better therapist because of it."
Isn't it just amazing? In the ministry, we talk a lot about brokenness, and I think I have come in contact with more brokenness this year than ever. So many broken people. And what is just so amazing, like you said, is that God doesn't waste a tear. He doesn't waste a hurt. He doesn't waste anything. Even those depths and moans from the prayer closet of Jesus, help.
Yeah.
He's there behind the scenes, and every broken piece fits perfect. And it just ties right into your testimony and your book.
Yes.
Which, when we spoke last time, you were thinking about your book.
I think I was like a chapter almost done. I was writing it, but I had no clue what I would do with it.
Well, you are done with the book, and it's getting ready to come out. And I would love to talk a little bit about this book, which you must read. It will change your life. What is the title of the book?
All right. The title of it is called Healing from Life's Deepest Hurts. And then the subtitle is Reclaiming Your Life After Grief, Loss, and Trauma.
I love it. And I think it's safe to say grief and loss and trauma can look so different, so many people, but be so depth, so deep, so raw, no matter what it is. I mean, even betrayal, it can just be raw. And so do you go through step by step on how to walk through this? Tell me a little bit about what you go through.
What you say about everybody's got different pains, different traumas, different losses. I like to say there's no pain Olympics. It is.
That's so good.
Pain is pain. Loss is loss. It's, I haven't met too many people that tell me, hey, they've got the exact story I do. And sometimes they can feel like they need to minimize, well, I haven't gone through what you have. But, it's like my feelings of betrayal are no deeper than their feelings of betrayal. My loss, my hurt, it doesn't have to be deeper than theirs. And so in my book, what I do is the first 9 chapters, I base it on Ecclesiastes, where it talks about there's a time and season for everything.
Yes.
And I start with just kind of the time to be born, kind of in the beginning, the time to cry, a time to laugh, a time to hope, a time to weep. A time to weep actually tells my story of exactly what happened. And from that point on, it's a time to heal, a time to trust, a time to forgive. And the very last chapter is a time to dance. And it ends with my wedding day dance. Although the morning I got married, I had already moved out of my uncle and aunt's house. And I woke up at 6 a.m. and I knew I had an appointment I needed to keep. And I texted my uncle and aunt and I said, close the windows, don't call the police if you hear a noise, it's just me. And I went back to that pergola and I put that music on. And I remember praying and saying, Lord, life is really good for me right now, but I never want to lose that first love that I've come back to. I never want to take that for granted. And so I started my wedding day with a dance with an audience of one.
I love that.
And I ended that day in the arms of my husband.
You're going to make me cry.
And so that's the first 9 chapters of my book. I actually share my story. That was a hard decision to make, being a therapist, because we typically are not transparent to, it's not about us.
Right.
But I know that when I was going through things, I needed to hear somebody say, me too. I've been through stuff too.
And don't you find that, our tagline's care, community, and connection. And I know when I go through something like betrayal or hurt or grief, I want to retreat.
That's right.
I want to isolate.
Yep.
That's what the enemy wants us to do. And I can't.
Right.
You have to get out there. You have to find your tribe. You have to find your people that are safe. And how important did you find that was in your story and your healing community?
That's actually the second part of the book is, and this is one of those things, I haven't seen anybody do this. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do what I feel like I'm supposed to. So the second part of my book is called Tools for Growth and Healing. And I bring in therapeutic tools that I walked through. And one of them is the importance of community. The importance of not pulling back. And there's some worksheets in there on grief. There's some things on forgiveness. There's prayers of forgiveness. There is the importance of our self-talk. The importance of...
Those are all so good. I can't wait.
The importance of music.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So. And, one of the last things my mom said to me before she died was, Lisa, forgive always.
Yes.
Love wins, forgive often.
Yes.
And she knew what I was going to be going through. And without forgiveness, you're stuck. Without
right.
forgiveness, your story stops.
Yes.
But it's like situations like yours. I'm sure people ask you, how do you forgive a man that tried to end your life? And
Yes.
how it can really only be
Sure.
done. How would you
Sure.
answer that to people
I
asking?
tell people that forgiveness is a choice. It's not a feeling.
It's not
Too
a
often
feeling.
people are looking for a feeling. I'll forgive when I feel like forgiving. And the very day my ex-husband assaulted me, he made a comment to me and he said, "Tell me the truth." He said, "You could never forgive me." And I looked at him, my face was bloody, and I said, "I want you to know you've gone too far. There's no future ever for us, obviously." I said, "But I will tell you this day, I will forgive you." And that very night, I prayed for my ex-husband, knowing he was in jail, and I prayed he wouldn't be scared. I prayed the angels would surround him, and it wasn't that I was in love with my husband, but there was always going to be a love there. And with forgiveness, if you don't forgive, I tell my clients, it's like an umbilical cord between you and the offender.
It is.
Whoever
You're giving
has
him
offended
power.
you, and you have to remember what's done. You have to, you stay attached to that, and it eats you up, not the other person. So for me, there was layers of forgiveness. I had to forgive my ex-husband. I had to forgive the people that had been in relationship with him. I had to forgive myself, which was really the hardest one to forgive, because I had felt like I had failed. I had failed as a mom, because now my family was a broken family. They came from a broken home. I felt I failed as a wife. What had I done that had caused this to happen? Now I want to say I know that I didn't, so I don't want people writing me and saying I didn't cause it. I know that. But I had to
But
forgive.
those tapes
That's right.
play in your head.
Yep. I had to forgive well-meaning Christians that had told me through the years, believe, 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 stay, stay, stay.
Oh, yes.
Because people are well-meaning, but they can say really hurtful things. And so it was one layer after another layer, and it's not a one-time thing. Forgiveness is you make a decision to forgive, but then the impact of that, it may be something comes up or there's a trigger or reminder, and that day you get to remind yourself, today I forgive again.
I love that so much, because forgiveness really is layers. It's like an onion. And some of the biggest, deepest hurts, that even led to Lisa Bain Ministries, I had to learn how to forgive. And you'll think, I'm there.
Yeah.
And then bam.
Yep.
The enemy will come and it's like, nope, there's another layer I got to get to, Lord. And some days it truly is a choice. It's just not a feeling.
The Bible says, bless those that curse you and despitefully use you. I've never seen it written where God says, blame those that despitefully use you and curse you.
And you talk about all this in your book.
I do.
Right? I can't wait.
Do.
Okay, so how can our viewers find your book? We'll put all of this up so you can see. Tell us how to find you, about your therapy services. How do we find you, Kimberly?
Well, you can find me at my website, KimberlyHaar.com.
Haar.
That's right.
We'll put it up.
I'm also on social media, Instagram, Facebook. You can order my book either on my website or where any retailer
We'll put it up.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere that you can, books are sold. So that would be the way if they want to contact me, again, through my website. I've got a free email list that they can join, and I send out just monthly updates, sometimes I send out free therapeutic resources. So that's...
You guys have to get this book, and I have to tell you, this lady is just I'm going to cry. You pray for the Lord. You pray to the Lord to bring tribe members. And this lady is the real deal. And her book and her words, she has so many times encouraged me through some really dark days. She's walked them, and yet here you are encouraging and helping. He doesn't waste a hurt. This book is going to bless you. And I love it that there's tools in there. You not only get to read, but you get to work it. And how do I work through this forgiveness? And Lord, help. So please go and get this book. It's going to be life-changing. And to end, what would you tell someone who is either walking through an abusive situation or just feeling lost? What would you just say to encourage someone that's watching right now that just kind of feels like, Jesus, where are you?
Well, the first thing is if you're walking through an abusive situation, I would say reach out and get good, professional, godly counsel because people will give advice, but they don't know your specific story. So the Bible talks about wise counsel, so reach out for wise counsel. When you're asking God, where are you? He's not afraid of your questions. He can handle them. He can handle your doubts. He can handle your anger,
Yes,
your
he
fear,
can.
your tears. God is closer than you think. And that's a part of taking time. It's not about rushing through a healing. We just don't want to get stuck. We just don't want to just camp where we are and nurse those wounds and hold on to those
Right.
wounds. We want to just keep working through that healing. Take the time you need. But God is faithful.
I love that. I love that. Do you want to end in prayer real quick?
I would love
Let's
to.
end in prayer, and we're just going to lift you up right now.
Father, I just thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on Treasure Talks. Lord, I thank you for every person that's watching and listening and is hearing the sound of our voices. Lord, I just speak to any pain and hurts that anybody might be carrying. Father, and I ask you to just make your presence be so real to everyone that is seeking your presence. Father, I thank you that you take little by little, you heal little by little. Father, you bring people into their paths that are going to be the right people with the right word at the right time. Father, I thank you that every person that is hearing my voice, Lord, reaches out and says, Father, I'm choosing to trust you. I'm choosing to lay my hurts at your feet, my cares at your feet. And Lord, I'm wanting to begin this journey of healing. Lord, I just thank you that your word says that when you begin a good thing, you're faithful to complete it. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your love. And thank you for your mercy. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Kimberly, you are a blessing to my heart, and I can't wait to read your book.
June 3rd,
Oh, June 3rd. Okay. mark it.
2025.
Oh, yay. Okay. It's going to be awesome, you guys. And thank you for joining us again for another episode of Treasure Talks. And make sure you go to our YouTube channel, ding the little bell. You can go to our website at lisabain.com, catch up on the episodes. But thank you for your support and thank you for joining us. And Kimberly, thank you. I love
Thank
you, my
you.
friend. And we will see you next month on Treasure Talks.